It left many feeling baffled and insulted.
Everything was ripe to start a real democratization of the society. And instead of that, he wanted to make a show off of himself. And this is where a parting between him and the people starts.
He felt bonded to, and it won with Cyrus, the ancient Achaemenid monarchy, the whole grand history of Iran, and its cultural achievements. But this was some kind of mystical association which the Iranian people weren't plugged into. They didn't know what he was doing.
The Shah's guests were ferried around in luxury coaches, unaware of the security measures surrounding the event. Fearful of terrorism or merely protest, Savak had rounded up thousands of people, loosely defined as troublemakers.
Because of the security, because we have to look after every heads of states or representative of that country, the security arrested a lot of people. They put them in prison. And I went to His Majesty. I said, they have arrested a lot of people who are innocent.
Persepolis had focused the attention of the world on Iran, but not in the way the Shah had hoped. After the event, human rights groups were flooded with lists of prisoners' names. They began to investigate and publicize claims of the detention, torture, and execution of political prisoners in Iran.
خدمت شما عرض بکنم که در اون سالها زندان یه چیز وحشتناکی بود. من یه چیزی میگم شما یه چیزی میشنوید. اصلا طرز برخوردشون، صحبتشون خیلی با ما وحشیانه و سخت بود. یکی دو بار انسان رو مثلا با پا 6 ساعت آویزون میکردن، 2 ساعت آویزون میکردن که اصلا انسان فکر میکرد که همه دنیا الان داره مغزش رو متلاشی میکنه.
An international campaign began which was to blacken the Shah's reputation.
He used to say to me very often, why is it that I get such a rotten press in Britain and Iraq does not? Saddam's Iraq. I used to say, and I still believe this, you get this bad press, Your Majesty, because you expect to be treated as one of us, as part of the Western world, whereas we don't treat Iraq as part of the Western world.
The Shah was baffled by the attacks, for at the same time as some in the West portrayed him as an oppressive dictator, Western leaders were urging him to spend billions to become the policeman of the Gulf. The Shah could never understand how he could be the object of both bitter vilification and sycophantic praise. But if he was hurt by the Western media, he had his revenge: oil. Convinced that the West had been getting cheap oil for too long, he worked within OPEC to raise prices. In 1973, oil prices quadrupled, and it was the Shah himself who in December of that year announced the latest rise. The Shah came to be seen as one of the West's chief tormentors, apparently taking particular delight in humiliating the British.
If you continue this way, a permissive, undisciplined society, you are going to blow up. You work not enough, you try to get too much money for the little work that you are putting up, and this cannot continue. It can continue for a few months, maybe 1 or 2 years, but not forever.
When he got a situation in hand where he had the whip hand, I can't say that he didn't enjoy that to a certain extent. After all, he felt that all through the years that he'd been Shah, that he'd had a pretty rough time. And that finally the day had come when he had some assets. And I think anybody in his position would have enjoyed that. And he certainly did.
I always thought at some point our country was in a way that it was too good to be true. We were a country we had history, we had civilization, we had natural wealth, we had human wealth, which is so important. We had the security, we had the stability, so everything was happening in Iran. There was a bright future in front of us.
By the mid-70s, the Shah had all the levers of power firmly in his grasp. Government was a mere instrument of his will, and all power emanated from the throne.
The Shah was the only game in town. He was the fount of all power. He was the fount of all patronage. If you were in disfavor with the Shah, of course you could go and eke out an existence for yourself, but you really had to seriously limit your ambitions.
For the people of Iran, political life was a charade. There were two parties, nicknamed the Yes Party and the Yes Sir Party. These were ultimately replaced by a single party, known as the King's Party.
ببینید مشکل این نوع نظام ها همینه که خودشون افراد به اینجا میکشونن که یا باید 100% موافقشون باشید یا مخالفشون. خودش راهی نمیذاشت که کسی اگر چیزی مثبتی هم ازش ببینه تایید کنه. خودش اینطوری میخواست.
By the mid-70s, the Shah had achieved an international standing far greater than anything his father could have dreamed of. The suitcase monarch of the 1950s was unrecognizable in the Emperor of Oil.
I think we were, to some extent, bedazzled by the superficial appearance of the Shah's control. Some of us, like myself, who had known of him back in the early 1950s, found it difficult to swallow the fact that he was a completely changed person. Others took it for granted that he was what he appeared to be: strong, forceful, formidable, all-knowing, all-wise, totally in control. And this was the picture he presented to the world. I think in a sense we all accepted this, although some of us accepted it with greater reluctance than others.
We particularly welcome you and the Empress as good friends and old friends.
But even at the height of his power, the Shah remained an enigmatic leader. His imperious demeanor was often belied by diffidence, even shyness.
I am deeply honored, Mr. President, to be once again your guest.
He was the reverse of a charismatic man. He was a hopeless public speaker, wooden, boring. Put him in front of a crowd, his instinct